Good morning. I'd like to open up the Audit Committee meeting for the month of September. Do we have any public speakers? Murray Bowden.
Got it.
Sounds
Good morning. I need to say what a pleasure it is to be here, because so many people at the MTA have been so cooperative that I am stunned, to say the least. Yesterday was Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement for the Jews, and I passed, which was a surprise. We had 20 people, a family, many of my grandchildren, my children, and that went spectacularly well. There have been so many people that have been so helpful. There are a couple who don't follow through, but nothing's 100%. So I want to take this opportunity to express my appreciation for all of those people at the MTA who have been assistants in helping me in the projects I work on, and an opportunity to say thank you. I won't be able to be at the board meeting today because I'll be at the Port Authority board meeting, and conflict, so I'll have to go there. So this will have to suffice for the whole board to say thank you to all those people all over the place who've been so nice, so helpful, and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes, please. Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, the Audit Committee work plan. I think we're going to have a change in the work plan, right, Mike? You're on.
Don't stay on.
It was on. Leave it alone. There it is.
Hello? Okay. Yes. The presentation on the MTA compliance with requirements of the Internal Control Act will be presented by the Chief Compliance Officer at the November meeting, and the balance of the plan remains unchanged.
Okay, next on the agenda is the review report for the second quarter of 2015.
Good morning.
Morning.
The first item I want to share with you this morning is the review report for the second quarter ended June 30, 2015. The draft financial statements have been reviewed by us. We have shared observations with management. As a part of our review procedures, we did not note any changes in accounting principles, policies, or procedures. The estimates that are included in these financial statements are consistent with what you've seen in the audit of our financial statements as well as in the previous quarter. We did not identify any unusual or significant transactions that should be brought to your attention. So from our standpoint, this report, upon acceptance by you, is ready for its release.
Okay, I just have a couple questions, but not for you, for our fellows here. Materials and supplies. It's on page 20 of the report. Increase from $519 million to $582 million, or 12% in 6 months. Why was there a huge buildup, and do we have a reserve for obsolescence? We never see that, so I'm just wondering why such a big difference in 6 months.
Okay, Jim, on page 7, we have an explanation for the for the increases for the period. So in the let's see, the second bullet, it says an increase in materials and supplies of $63 million due to increases from MTA New York City Transit, primarily $34 million, and other agencies of 29. So is that the number you're talking about?
Yeah, the $63 million increase.
Right. Bill, would you want to address New York City Transit? Is Bill Vazoulis here?
Yes, I would have to look a little further into the details to get you a complete answer, which is what I'll do. But I believe it's the result of increased maintenance work on the system as a whole. So we have been doing much more work than probably in the prior year, and that would result in the increase in the use of the supplies. But I'll get a further.
Okay.
I'll go into further detail on it and get back to you.
The only other question I had was on page 24, cash flow from rents and other receipts decreased from $192 million to $143 million by $49 million, or 25% decrease. Can someone give me a good answer for that?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. I mean, I don't know of any particular reason why it would go down. You know, this is cash versus accrual, but I'll have to get you an answer on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, and I guess GASB 72 is not effective until January 1st of 16, correct?
It'll be effective in the future, yes. It will
Right.
not be effective until first quarter of next year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can I get a motion to accept the report as it's been submitted? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, the MTA IG's office review.
The one-page, two-page report that we have in your package as well is a special agreed-upon procedures report that we do under our contract with you, where we look at items that have been spent by the Inspector General. We look at their financial activity. We subject certain items to tests and transactions. These items are really not subjected to our audit on an ongoing basis because of materiality, but you do have us look at it. This report is consistent with what we have issued in the past. There are no findings of any concern, again, to bring to your attention.
Any questions regarding the IG's report? Can I get a motion to accept it as submitted? All in favor? Carried. Okay, GASB 67 and 68.
This is a statement. GASB 67 and 68 will be effective for your pension plans for the year ended December 31st, 2014, which we are now presently auditing, and we'll provide those to you in January when we go over the results of those audits. GASB 68 will have a significant impact on you and on your financial statements in the future. I think in previous meetings I've talked about the fact that there will be an unfunded pension obligation that will be recorded in your financial statements for the first time. In the past, we have had footnote disclosure as it relates to your own plans, but you also participate in several multi-employer plans, that being NILERs and NICERs. You will now be picking up a proportionate liability of those unfunded obligations as well. I'm going to give you a very high-level overview of just a couple of items. I'm not going to go through the whole slide deck, but I thought there were a couple things that I would point out to you. The first being, again, the GASB 68 highlights, which are up on the screen. This is something where, in essence, when you have pension benefits that are being given to your employees under a trust agreement, you're now required to recognize that obligation. The liability is basically measured based upon the pension plan's fiduciary net position. And what that means is the assets that have been accumulated in that pension plan are compared to the actuarial liability that's calculated by the actuaries. And if there's a excess of liabilities over assets, you will record an obligation. You could be in some situations in an excess asset position, and then you would recognize that asset, but you are unfortunately not in that position. You will have an obligation that you record. For the first time, there's also something called deferred outflows and inflows. And what that means is it's certain items that are not recognized in the actual pension plan financial statements on an ongoing or on an actual basis. One example is the actuary, when they do their calculations of expected investment return, they may expect that you will, over a period of time, earn 8%. In periods where you earn 10% on that money, you have an excess asset that you don't recognize because that gets spread over a 5-year period. In cases where your investment may not perform as you had expected, you then would also not recognize an additional expense or a liability. So there's sort of a smoothing still is the way the actuaries treat this over a 5-year period. That's one of the items that would be shown in this net deferred inflow or outflow type of position. This will be effective for you December 31st, 2015. We're in the process of working with Bob and Pat and their staffs to determine what the actual amounts will be. At the present time, we can't tell you that because some of the information has not been yet audited by either the auditors of the multi-employer plans or, in our case, the December 31st, 2014 financial statements for you have not been issued. There is one thing I want you to understand, though, in terms of the timing. The GASB did give entities up to a 30-month time period to determine what is the measurement date. And the measurement date basically means when are you going to actually look at this asset and liability position of the plan, and you have up to a 2.5-year window to go back and look at that. The reason for that is census data is needed from the individual employers in these plans. The actuaries have to do their calculations, and in some cases, that's up to a year, if not longer, getting that information put together. I also have this slide up for you because the NILERS plan, which is the state plan, has a March 31 year end. The NICERS plan is a June 30 year end. So, for example, if you look at 12/31/15 over there on the right, you will be picking up the 12/31/14 information of your pension plans. You will be picking up the 3/31/15 funded obligation of the state plan. And for the city, you will be picking up the June 30, 2015 information. So there's going to be a blending of dates in terms of what's recorded in your financial statements. For the first time, you'll be recording an asset or a liability based on information not totally in your control. If you recall, maybe about a year ago, you had some questions when we were going over the pension plans, and you were concerned about the fact that Pat and Bob don't necessarily have total vision into your own plans. Now, not alone is that going to be the situation, but you're going to have situations where, again, we're going to be relying on information from auditors of those other plans. We'll be doing some test work on it. Bob and Pat will also be looking at that information. From your own plan standpoint, yes, Pat and Bob now have control over those plans, so you'll be able to understand and actually have control over those assets and liabilities. But there will be amounts now recorded in these financial statements that will not relate totally to you. There are just a couple of assumptions that are used in these plans I want to make sure you understand. The GASB basically came up with now saying that a plan must use a single discount rate. And what that is, it's a blended rate looking at what is your asset position. If you can show that you have assets in your current plan and future contributions that will pay the liabilities when they come due, you can use the long-term rate of return on that pension asset. And for instance, if that long-term rate of return is 7%, you can do that. Some plans are not funded as well as yours, and in those situations, you have to use the short-term rate of return, which is the 20-year tax-exempt general obligation bond. And you can imagine that's going to be significantly less than a 7% expected rate of return. For those employers that have those types of plans, they're going to have huge obligations they'll be recording because the net present value is going to be much higher than using a discount rate that allows you to use the long-term expected rate of return. I bring that up to you only from a standpoint of, again, that's a significant estimate that management uses and the actuaries use in determining that obligation. We will be challenging that estimate, but I don't expect there to be any concerns or anything or any issues from that perspective. The last item I want to share with you, and then I'll open to questions, is how the actual actuarial obligation is recorded. It's based upon now a single actuarial method. Up until this year, state plans, governmental plans were able to use a variety of actuarial methodologies in determining this net pension obligation. The GASB basically said in order to have consistency, we want everyone to use the same actuarial method. So it's now going to be the entry-age actuarial cost method, and it's a level percentage of pay. That is very consistent with what major corporations use around the country. So you will now be on a consistent basis from that standpoint. The last thing I want to point out to you, and I'll go back to this one slide that shows the timing. Again, I mentioned to you June 30, I mentioned to you 3/31 of 15, and then 12/31 of 14. Those are the measurement dates that you'll have for your various pension obligations. Any contributions that you make after that point in time will not be recognized as expense in your financial statements. So a contribution you make to your own plan after 12/31/14 will be showed as a deferred outflow of assets. So it'll show as an asset until that next time period when the measurement date occurs. Likewise, you make a payment to the city of New York after June 30 of 2015, that's going to show as an asset. It will not show as an expense in your financial statements. So you're going to see a very large difference between your budgetary financial statements, which I know you pay a lot of attention to, and what you will see in terms of the GASB-based financial statements. So that will be a change. And then the last thing that Bob and I were talking about yesterday is the fact that you've typically had a position where you have funded the ARC, and I think that's a very good position to have from a standpoint of you're funding what the actuary is recommending that you make on a contribution basis. A lot of the actuaries in determining how that calculation or contribution will be made will not change their methodology. So they may not go to this single amortization method I told you about earlier in terms of the actuarial method. You could have a larger actuarial contribution required compared to what the GASB expense will be. So that's just another thing for you to look at. As these items get implemented, we'll work with Bob and Pat to make sure it's visible to you in terms of, what were the specific changes this year to last year, so you can get apples and, apples comparisons of how this is working. But there will be significant changes, and there will be a significant obligation recorded on your financial statements. We just can't tell you what that amount is today because we don't have the information.
Okay, is there any questions? Neil?
I don't think this is a question of accounting rules, but it's a question of communication, external communication. So this will be some significant increase in a liability on the books, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
So given that the sophistication of your organization and our financial organization is obviously greater than the general public in looking at statements, how do we ensure that when the change happens, we at least are over-communicating to whatever stakeholders do care about our financial statements, that they notice this coming, and we don't have to deal with some retrograde operation where we have to explain why it went so much bigger, which is purely a change in accounting rules as opposed to a fundamental change in the underlying obligations.
Right. The rating agencies, which do provide a significant means of communicating, our financial condition, have been looking at these things. I think the change here now is we're able to pick up the multi-employer plans, NICERs and NICELRs, and our obligation there. We've always been able to tell them what our unfunded liability was in terms of our own sponsored plans. So I think it's a good change in that it makes it makes the plans that we participate in provide us the information so that we can tell people our overall picture. And so I think the rating agencies know it's coming. They'll be there. They have been really sending messages, quite explicit messages for several years now, that pension liabilities, even OPEB liabilities, are something that they focus on. And so I think the message is getting out there, and the more sophisticated investors are waiting to see what those numbers really are. So we will continue to provide information to them on a regular basis. But this is a good change in that it is putting everybody on the same place and trying to be transparent. What Mike said, I do want to emphasize, look, we're going to continue to fund our pensions the way we have been funding, which is a very prudent, very conservative way. And as you all know, we've been also adding additional funds into our underfunded Long Island Railroad additional pension plan. And just to point out, we've made significant progress there. In a matter of a couple of years, we've gone from 24% funding to what looks to be about 49, close to 50% funding on that plan. So again, transparency hopefully will work in our favor when people see our relative position versus some of the other, borrowing entities or governmental issuers that are out there. So,
Any other questions? Okay. Next on our agenda, Mike, stay there for a second. Our next thing on the agenda is the appointment of you people. I just have a question here. We received the PCAOB document outlining, and I just want to throw that to you and say, okay, give us a little feedback on it. How does it affect us? Were we included, not included?
We are, as auditors of public companies, we are subjected to reviews by the Public Company Audit Oversight Board, which is the PCAOB. They annually look at our audits of selected issuer engagements. You would not fall under that population of engagement. But not to discount that, we are under review every year. That information is made publicly available. They are presently working on our current year audit as we speak, and I would say that at the moment the results are very consistent with what was issued in the previous report. We take those matters very seriously. We make improvements in our controls and things of that nature, and we, quite frankly, are very pleased with the results of those that last report compared with our competitors, because we do have less of a comment rate than other of the Big Four have. We also, in the past year, I think I shared this with you at a previous meeting, but we do also are subjected to a 3-year annual peer review. That most recent peer review was issued in December of last year, and we had a report that was passed with no comment, which in essence was a clean control type of operation.
Okay, any questions? Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the appointment of our external auditors. You remember last 2 months ago, they won the bidding process. Now we just have to appoint you. So I just need a motion to appoint them. Got a motion? Got a second? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the MTA Diversity Officer, Michael Gardner.
Morning. A few months ago, we sat here and we talked about some of the gaps in our process, and there were essentially 960 projects in which we had not closed out, dating back to 1998. And I'm happy to sit here this morning to tell you that over the past few months, with the help of the MTA team, internal audit, the IG's office, we've closed out 948 of the 960 projects. And so, if you look on the bar graph on page 4, that's the trend, and the trend is upwards. And so we're going to ensure in moving forward that the closeout process is going to be re-engineered. We're going to work with the internal audit, the IG, and other operating agencies, CPM, to make sure that there's going to be a universal closeout process. So 5, 10 years from now, we won't be sitting here talking about the lack of projects being closed out. Let me go back to the first page. And due to the audit with respect to the IG's office that highlighted a lot of gaps, we've accepted all 10 of his recommendations, and we basically are working towards finalizing each and every one of those. Going to page number 3, that gives you a breakdown of the actual closeouts that we've done since the last time that we sat. Page number 5, one other recommendation was that our staff was not conducting site visits on a consistent basis. Well, that's changed. Since January, we've conducted a total of 243 site visits. This month alone, we're going to achieve 48 site visits. Each one of my MWDB contract managers are required to perform at least 8 site visits per month. One of the things that's really going to help us is that the board approved a new software system that's going to allow us to effectively monitor and enforce our MWDB goals almost in real time. And what that means is that as opposed to my staff chasing paper, getting prime contractors to comply with submitting their MWDB payments in a paper format, and then downloading those numbers, which is prone to human error. This new system, which was mandated by Albany, all 96 state agencies and authorities, we're now going to use the same system. And what this is going to do is going to require the prime contractors to download their MWDBE payments in this one system, and the MWDBE subcontractors are then going to go in and verify that that payment is correct. And so it is going to evade us having to chase papers, download data, which is prone to human error.
Prior to this increased level of site visits, were you just taking contractors' words on compliance on various items?
We were basically we were not going out as many site visits as we should have been going out on, and we were focusing on the paper, chasing the paper, downloading the information in the paper. Now we're going to each and every site in conjunction with our CPM, doing the life of the contract, looking at paperwork, certified payrolls, making sure that the MWDB firms are working in the areas in which they have been highlighted to work in, and making sure that there's a presence. And so basically, we are very, very optimistic that as we move forward, the issue with site visits, the issues with regards to closeouts has been fully addressed. Turning to page number 7, the IG also did an audit on our DBE payments, which found some flaws, and once again, on in 10 of the recommendations, we've embraced all 10, and we have started implementing some of these solutions. Once again, what's going to help us in this area is that we've hired a new IT person who's going to start October 1st, who's going to be responsible for making sure that the data that we are reporting from all the operating agencies and that we report to the board and our external partners, including the state and the FTA, is in fact accurate. Once again, I want to thank Barry and Beth Keating and their staff for highlighting this and giving us the framework that we need in order for us to move forward in a focused and an effective way. Turning to page number 8, once again, the IG did a audit on our DBE certification process. The issues there lie not with the initial certification of the firms, but the recertification of the firm. We found out that we were not processing the recertifications on a timely basis, and if firms were not responding in a timely basis, they were still certified. So what we started doing immediately reducing the backlog of those recertifications. And if those DBE firms do not respond on a timely basis with their updated information on the recertification, they are being decertified. And so we're going to take a real strict approach basically to those DBE firms who do not submit their information in on a timely basis. Also, once again, the B2G system is going to give us the wherewithal to make sure that we can look at the financial information and make sure that it is consistent with the tax returns. Also, the training, we are training our certification managers to be able to look at financial statements and to digest them and to make sure that the information is accurate. Every manager now has access to Nexus Lexis, which will give them the ability to look to see if there's any more companies, affiliation companies, that's associated with that firm. So on page 6, what are the next steps, the immediate next steps? The immediate next steps, once again, is for us to hire our outstanding staff. There was a point in period of time of about a year ago in which we had 9 openings, vacancies. We have hired 8. Our final manager is going to start in mid-October, so we'll be fully staffed. Implement the new New York State B2G system, and working with Mike and Donna and Lamont Kears, we're going to update the all agency policies, basically to focus on the responsibility of MWDB contract compliance with respect to my managers in relation to CPM staff, making sure that we are working in conjunction and make sure that the goals that we establish in our contracts are the goals that's going to be achieved, and that we would be working with the IG's office to root out fraud that we may see. I want to just thank Barry and Beth and his staff for the audit to give us the framework for improvement. I want to thank Mike and Mike Prada and Ben Launer and Michelle Woods and Winnie by giving us the guidance and the resources that we had, because we had stated that we were going to eradicate these 960 projects by 12/31. Mike and I agreed early on that we were going to do it by 8/31. We are 12 projects off of our goal. Also want to thank Donna and Lamont Kears, because as we move forward, we are going to make sure that all agency policy is going to be adhered to. And I want to thank the chairman and the CEO for his support in allowing us to get extra resources for us to eradicate the weaknesses that were pointed out by the IG's audit.
Any questions? I guess everyone's satisfied with your report, and I think you've done a heck of a job here.
Thank you.
Sure.
You know, I've heard your report before, and we've discussed it before, as you know. I do want to say that I very much appreciate the effort that you and your staff put in to make this work, and all the help that the MTA agencies gave in order to get back on track. I have complete confidence that you'll be able to maintain the systems that are set up, and that going forward, you'll be wonderful. Thank you very much.
And I think the next time you come before us is going to be January, so we want things to be as positive as they are today. Okay, thank you. We have anything else to be brought before this committee?
No, we're good.
Okay, our next meeting is scheduled for November the 18th, and need a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Carried.